France likes to do things its own way. It plays by its own rules and charts its own path, refusing to blend in with the crowd or do what everyone else is doing. And nowhere is that more evident than in its military. The French armed forces have always been known for their unpredictable and somewhat unconventional actions, and that's still true to this day. Indeed, France's army today arguably makes zero sense in many ways. Yet, while that might seem like a weakness at first, it's actually one of the reasons why the French army is so effective and is fast becoming one of the most fearsome, formidable forces not just in Europe, but the entire world. Indeed, it's France's unpredictability and outright refusal to comply with the norms and standards of many of its NATO allies that make it such an interesting and unique member of the alliance. And we'll dive into some of the out-of-ordinary aspects of the French armed forces in this video, beginning with perhaps the strangest of them all, the French Foreign Legion. The Legion, as it's commonly referred to, is one of the world's only elite military units to be made up of people of numerous nationalities from all over the globe. To be more precise, recent statistics suggest that approximately 140 countries are represented in the Legion today, with some of the finest, best-trained soldiers from Europe, Africa, Asia, and beyond, all battling side by side for the flag of France. While some other nations also have units that employ non-natives and non-citizens, the French Foreign Legion is in a class of its own. It's the most active and high-profile example of a unit of this kind, and also ranks among the most efficient military units on Earth, with a long and storied track record of successful operations in locations like Chad, the Ivory Coast, Mali, Afghanistan, and beyond. And given its past successes and elite reputation, the Foreign Legion is often one, if not the first French ground unit to arrive in conflict zones and open fire along the front lines. It's the perfect option for Paris to deploy in situations that could be regarded as somewhat messy or difficult from a political perspective, and a vital cog of the French military machine. Few other nations worldwide can boast of their own elite corps of world-class operatives, ready, willing, and able to lay their lives on the line for a country they weren't born in. And while the Legion demonstrates France's ability and willingness to look beyond its borders for military strength and support, it also stands in stark contrast to much of the country's military doctrine, which largely revolves around domestic development and production and homegrown excellence. Indeed, while many other nations, including major military powers, will use a mixture of domestically designed equipment and other weapons, munitions, and vehicles sourced from other countries, Paris strives to use as much made-in-France gear as it possibly can. And it has no qualms about bucking trends and ignoring its allies' examples when it comes to which sorts of weapons, vehicles, and other assets it decides to prioritize. Take the Jaguar, for example. The EBRC Jaguar is a six-wheeled armored fighting vehicle designed and developed by three French companies: KNDS France, Arquus, formerly known as Renault Trucks Defense, and Thales. It was in development for over a decade before entering service in 2022, with a grand total of 300 of these vehicles set to roll out by 2035. Each one cost around €6 million or $7 million, and they fall into the category of medium armored reconnaissance vehicles, which is not a category of military vehicles that many other nations pay much attention to. Indeed, many nations did away with these kinds of vehicles years ago, but France, ever the outlier, continues to make them one of its top priorities and intends to use vehicles like the Jaguar for both recon and screening missions in the coming years. Recon missions quite simply revolve around the vehicles being dispatched ahead of other units in order to scout out locations and look for enemy positions or assets, gathering intelligence to report back to command. Screening missions, meanwhile, involve specialized assets, like the Jaguar, being deployed either just ahead of or along the flanks of larger formations, with the objectives of providing early warning, protection, or even a distraction, keeping enemy forces busy, while the rest of the friendly force takes up a more strategic position to eliminate them. To carry out missions like these, the Jaguars need to be fast, powerful, and capable of taking a hit. Fortunately, that's exactly how France made them. Equipped with 500 horsepower militarized Volvo D11 six-cylinder turbo diesel engines, each Jaguar can reach a peak speed of 56 miles per hour, 90 km per hour, making them much faster than the likes of tanks and many other armoured vehicles, with an operational range of up to 500 miles, 800 kilometers, which is around 200 miles more than the average tank. One of the big reasons they're so fast and able to cover such big distances is because they're fitted with wheels, not tracks. That does put them at a slight disadvantage when it comes to off-road excursions, but France's commanders know that and will most likely avoid deploying the Jaguars in off-road environments unless absolutely necessary. Each Jaguar also comes complete with a 40 CTC, or 40mm case telescope armament system, designed to fire 40mm telescoped ammunition, along with 4 Acheron MP missiles, French-made fire-and-forget anti-tank guided missiles with a range of just over 3 miles or 5 kilometers. In addition to its primary armament, the Jaguar also comes complete with a T3 Hornet S remote-controlled weapon station and a 7.62mm machine gun, plus a Gallic self-protection system, capable of deploying 14 80mm smoke grenades to keep the vehicle safe when operating in dangerous locations. The Jaguar's super survivability also comes courtesy of its NATO standard STANAG 4569 Level 4 armor, with additional modular armor kits also available to provide extra protection as needed. All of this adds up to a vehicle that, while not a tank, certainly doesn't feel like a traditional infantry fighting vehicle or troop carrier either. The Jaguar is remarkably powerful and well protected, yet extraordinarily agile as well. It's a testament to France's consistent focus on producing and deploying wheeled vehicles that can get in and out of areas quickly and efficiently, while dealing plenty of damage to their enemies along the way. We've seen the benefits of this approach in action on numerous occasions in the past. During the Gulf War, for example, France deployed 12,500 of its personnel in the form of Division Daguet, which operated on the left flank of America's 18th Airborne Corps. Its objective was clear: capture the Al Salman Air Base, situated some 90 miles or 150 kilometers in Iraqi territory. The offensive began at 7 a.m. on February 24, 1991, and the airbase was captured the very next day. The French force also eliminated Iraq's 45th Mechanized Infantry Division, with only 2 French troops killed in combat and minor equipment losses. It was one of the most impressive operations of the entire war. While other coalition forces were still readying themselves for battle and planning their next steps over the days and weeks to follow, France sped ahead of everyone else, achieving its objectives in record time. And it was in large part thanks to the many rapid armoured vehicles in its arsenal at the time, including VAB armoured personnel carriers, AMX-10 RC wheeled fighting vehicles, and ERC-90 reconnaissance vehicles. The Jaguar is set to replace all 3 of those vehicles, bringing next-generation efficiency to a force that's already proven itself as one of the fastest and most effective on Earth. Medium armoured vehicles like this aren't perfect. They have their flaws and their weaknesses. They stand to struggle in drone-heavy environments, for example, and drones are certainly a hot topic in the military world at the moment, due to Russia's enormous reliance on massive drone swarms and missile salvos to cause chaos across Ukraine. However, while unmanned aerial vehicles are set to become a bigger and more important part of warfare in years ahead, countries should not make the mistake of focusing so much on drones alone that they forget about other kinds of conflicts. That's especially true for France, which is the second most active fighting force in the NATO alliance after the United States and conducts a lot of its military operations in Africa. There, in countries like Mali, Syria, and Chad, French forces have amassed a wealth of experience carrying out counter-terrorism and counter-insurgency missions on countless occasions, with Paris repeatedly having to play peacekeeper in countries it once countered among its colonies. Those kinds of missions demand flexibility. They often involve dynamic, rapidly changing battlefield conditions and front lines that are anything but stable. In those kinds of environments, speed can often be the difference maker between victory and defeat. And while many forces would struggle to cover ground and get ahead of their enemy, France's focus on an agile and mobile ground force ensures that it's always one step ahead. During Operation Serval in Mali, for example, French forces were tasked with ousting Islamic militants that had launched a rebellion against the government and were marching towards the center of Mali from the country's northern regions. Once more, with the help of speedy recon vehicles like the AMX-10RC and ERC, the French army was able to cover thousands of miles of ground in a fraction of the time it would have taken many other ground forces, quite possibly preventing the entire collapse of the Malian government in the process. Given France's propensity for using armoured vehicles that are more agile than average, one might assume that French tanks also boast bonus mobility compared to their international counterparts. But that's not the case. In yet another example of its unconventionality, France has made battle tanks that actually rank among the biggest and heaviest around, the Leclerc. Designed and developed during the 1980s and officially introduced into service in 1992 to replace the AMX-30, the Leclerc is, in many ways, the embodiment of everything that makes the French army so special, both good and bad. Around 860 of these tanks were built between 1990 and 2008, with approximately half of them shipped off to the United Arab Emirates, leaving France with around 406 units total according to the latest data, of which 222 are operational and 184 remain in storage. Each one measures up at over 32 feet, 9.87 meters in length, almost 12 feet, 3.6 meters in width, and over 8 feet, 2.53 meters tall, with enough space inside for a crew of 3, commander, gunner, and driver. Weight varies depending on the variant, but the heaviest Leclercs tip the scales at around 63 tons. These tanks are also exceptionally expensive, costing around 7.7 million euros or $9 million per unit. And when they were first made, during the Cold War era, they were in many ways groundbreaking. First of all, they were almost entirely French-made. That means that almost every component, from the tracks to the armour, and nearly everything in between, was made in France. That's very different to many other main battle tanks, which might feature an engine from one country, a chassis from another, a fire control system from somewhere else, and so on. The Leclerc's design was also exceptionally ambitious, with France wanting to break new ground in terms of tank accuracy, range, and firepower. To bring that dream to life, its teams developed the world's first fully digital fire control system, boasting automatic target tracking, superior thermal imaging than most other NATO tanks of the time, and an innovative though somewhat high-maintenance auto-loader too. Fitted with a CN-120-26 or Model F1 smoothbore 120mm tank gun, a 12.7mm coaxial M2HB machine gun, and a 7.62mm machine gun, the Leclerc is certainly capable of packing a punch. And while it's not the fastest, the strongest, or the most advanced tank in the world, it served Paris's purposes perfectly over the years. It also provides the ideal foundation for France to build on, with plans to upgrade the existing Leclerc fleet into next-generation Leclerc XLRs, which will introduce an array of upgrades, including a remotely operated turret gun, additional modular armor packages, rear cage armor, and cutting-edge electronic networked architecture. The Leclerc represents France's independent, free-thinking approach to military matters. It's not perfect, but it does the job it was built to do, and like the Jaguar and other assets in the French arsenal, it gives Paris something a little different to work with, something unique and distinct compared to many of the other main battle tanks in operation across the NATO alliance. Because of that, France has more ways than most to catch its enemies by surprise, to defy their expectations and confuse their commanding officers. Many countries around the world use German Leopard 2 tanks, for example, or American M1 Abrams. So countries like Russia are constantly looking for ways to counter and destroy those specific sorts of tanks. Given that the Leclerc is only operated by France and the UAE, it's more of an unknown quantity and has the potential to perform much more impressively than its technical specifications might suggest. And while France may not lead the world in the tank department, it has produced some of the most impactful and innovative pieces of military hardware in other categories. Its Caesar self-propelled howitzer, for example, was a game-changer at the time of its launch and is still immensely relevant and valuable today, having been used by operators across Europe, Africa, and Asia in conflicts like the Battle of Mosul, the Battle of Baghouz, and the Russia-Ukraine War. A 155mm 52 caliber self-propelled gun, capable of firing 39 52 caliber NATO standard shells, the Caesar comes attached to either a 6x6 or 8x8 truck chassis for rapid repositioning and almost unparalleled mobility. Powered by an autonomous weapon network system, it's able to precisely strike targets as far as 25 miles or 40 kilometers away with the use of extended range, full-bore ERFB ammunition, but can even fire further if needed, using rocket-assisted or smart munitions to strike locations up to 34 miles or 55 kilometers away. And it's only thanks to France's inherently independent style of thinking that made the Caesar possible to begin with. While other countries were working on much heavier and far less mobile systems, France dared to be different. Its engineers dreamed big, envisioning a howitzer that could fire further and deploy faster than anything else in existence at the time. And they had the freedom to experiment with that idea, resulting in the Caesar, a shining example of France's speed and efficiency-oriented doctrine in action. It's down to that same doctrine, along with France's unshakable confidence and belief in doing things its own way, that has led to numerous other exciting innovations, from the French Rafale jets, which rank among the very best in the world, to its ongoing Scorpion program, which aims at modernizing the country's army like never before, not only introducing new vehicles like the aforementioned Jaguar and the Griffon, but also unifying its forces through a centralized information system that will enhance battlefield mobility, networking, and communication capabilities like never before, bringing yet more efficiency to an army renowned for its rapid responses. But beyond its speedy armored vehicles and supercharged self-propelled howitzers, perhaps the most important piece of the French military puzzle is its nuclear arsenal. With an estimated 219 nukes to its name, Paris possesses the world's fourth largest stock of nuclear warheads, but it uses them in quite a different fashion to nearly every other nuclear power on the planet in three distinct ways. Firstly, France isn't part of the NATO agreement, in which the alliance's nuclear nations, the US and the UK, share their warheads with other non-nuclear members, like Belgium, Germany and Italy. Instead, France retains complete control over its entire arsenal at all times. Second, unlike other big nuclear powers, France does not operate on the principle of mutually assured destruction, but instead follows a policy of strict sufficiency. In simple terms, what that means is while many countries have promised to only launch nuclear weapons if its enemy does so first, France has made no such pledges. Instead, it operates a strategically sized arsenal that's just big enough to effectively wipe out an enemy force, including Russia, which helps to keep its maintenance costs down while still making it a major threat, theoretically deterring anyone from invading its territory or threatening its sovereignty. Third, and perhaps most important of all, France reserves the right to fire nuclear warning shots at its enemies. In other words, if the country feels that it's sufficiently under threat, like if Russian forces were marching towards its borders, for example, it wouldn't simply wait to see what happened or rely on diplomacy and negotiations to work things out. It has the ability to fire a small, but still exceptionally dangerous tactical nuclear device to defend itself and deter its enemy from any further aggression. It's a truly unique system, like so many other elements of the French armed forces, and it could someday prove to be the most vital factor in keeping France safe from a future invasion. Because while other countries might dawdle, dally and hesitate, France has proven time and time again that it's more ready to fire first and ask questions later. This, combined with its commitment to domestic innovation, bold experimentation, and boundary-breaking engineering, makes France by far one of the deadliest foes for any enemy in its way. Now you can learn more about France's military innovations and the impacts they're having in the Russia-Ukraine war in this video, which looks at how Paris has pledged an astonishing 100 of the world's best fighter jets to support Kyiv's cause. Or for a deeper dive into France's military history and evolution, check out this retrospective look at how the country developed into one of the world's major military superpowers, strong enough to rival the likes of Russia and China, despite being a fraction of their size. And finally, make sure to subscribe to our channel too, for more insightful analysis, in-depth assessments, and breaking military news reports from around the world.